one is going to be around the Zhao book, but I'd like you to just think back to what you wrote for chapters 4 and 5, and particularly the part that is, what questions does this raise for you about your practice? Are there any questions you'd like to put before the group that were intriguing to you? And then we can see whether or not there are some pearls of wisdom we can share across. These 2 chapters are really heavily on the kinds of concepts that you're either talking about in 611 or you talked about a prior semester in 611. Megan, and we'll just jump in because we're a small group.
Yeah,
so.
there was this part in there talking about strategies and adopting strategies, and that you have to have those sort of short-term transitional kind of, which I interpreted as, teaching them, this process of teaching them the strategies and giving them things that you sort of impose on them, hoping that they'll embrace it and make it their own. But that happens. That's a very slow process for it to become natural and for them to sort of inherit it. And my frustration with that process is how slow it is, and I know my students are constant. Like, I do the act of reading with Post-its, and I make them do that, and they just Post-its again. And like at a certain point in the semester, it gets to be kind of wears on me. Like, if you complain one more time, I'm gonna lose my mind. And I just, my question is, how do you deal with that frustration or that resistance on the part of the learner to continue to practice until it becomes natural? And I think part of it is that there are some students who are already accelerated enough to give up the Post-its because they do that naturally, but there are plenty of students who aren't, and who just resist.
I had that exact same question because we adopted a new math program, and it's math expressions, and we spend time talking about at least 8 different strategies to solve a 2-digit by 2-digit multiplication. And there comes a point, and it's our first year doing it, where I'm like, oh my God, I just want to move on. I'm so tired of this. Mm-hmm. But it is, I mean, I'm starting to slowly see the payoff of the kids talking about it and each adopting their own strategy. But like you too, I think, because I feel like there's more to get through. And then my question was for the kids that get it, and I don't feel like they're being challenged in the program at all, and their parents are starting to complain. And you try and talk about, well, there's great value in being able to explain their thinking and be able to solve it in a different way, and it's a new program, so you need to give it time to, but I had the same question.
Any advice you'd give them? I really heard 2 different things. You're getting frustrated, your students are getting frustrated, and then you're getting frustrated. But your kids...
And my kids are too. So,
the
ones
too.
that
Okay.
are excelling, they're like so bored with it that it feels like we're spending too much time on the same thing, where they're like, I get this, I want to move on.
Okay, so the basic differentiation question, how do you manage whole class instruction when
And
people are at
then the
different
program's
places?
supposed to have built-in differentiation, but we're seeing that it's just more busy work. It's not challenging. It's just, here's another worksheet, do more problems. I'm like, that's not legitimate differentiation in my mind.
Right.
And yet, I think many of you, at least in the cases that I wrote, named differentiation as a key component of your beliefs about teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So that might mean that you need some centers where people can go more deeply, and they just quietly get up and go to those.
Right. But then that's, I mean, in learning a new curriculum and having, 4 new curriculums this year, it's like, I just don't feel like I have the time to dedicate to find both activities that are for the learners that this is too much for them, but then still finding the acceleration. Like, I just wish the resources were already there. And it sounds lazy in a way, but it's just too much planning.
So maybe you do a little bit at a time, and the next year you have those in place, you create a couple more. Sometimes I think we don't create any because it seems too overwhelming.
And then I wish, I said there's 7 4th grade teachers, so why aren't we, we don't have time to get, you take a unit, and it's, but there's no time built in our day to right now to do that.
So you're in your ideal environment, you're gonna be
Yes!
having more common planning
Yes.
time, and people are gonna collaborate
Divide and
and create
conquer.
this, yes.
Well, and I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Julie.
Oh, I was just gonna say, a lot of times when I have a struggle where the kids, like, they're split, I have the ones who know what they're doing, mentor the other ones in a way, or teach the next thing sometimes. And sometimes you can't do that, I know.
Right, and then I've done that, but then I have parents that complain like, okay, challenging does not mean that my child should always be the one having to teach other people. And so I guess I'm trying to find that happy balance.
Well, and I think a piece of this is about the change process in schools, too, because I think a lot of times what I've seen districts do is August 15th launch the new curriculum.
Right, and
You know,
that's exciting.
and it's like,
Oh.
whoa, hold on, you
Yeah.
know, and all of a sudden you have X amount of time when you're already trying to set up your classroom.
Well, and we
whatever.
said too, it would have been one thing if it was a rolling implementation, but these fourth graders are dropped brand new into this program that uses different wording, different procedures, and they are like, it's basing it on knowledge that they should have had in kindergarten, first, second, third grade.
Right.
And so it's like, oh my God.
Right. So it
Like
really
they
is
aren't giving
about.
the wording, we're having to modify all the assessments, and it just feels like a lot of work that's sort of,
Maybe you could have your kids create some activities, so it wouldn't be teaching, but it would be creating games that would help the other kids learn it, and would also then give you some stuff. They might perceive that differently.
I've also seen an analysis of misconceptions that kids who are more sophisticated about their process can see into. You might set up, like, here's a 2-digit, multiplication problem, but here are some common ways in which kids go astray. What was this mathematician thinking? What was this mathematician thinking? What would be your recommendation to him or to her?
And can you create a module using technology that would help somebody who's having this problem learn how to do it? So that would be building their technology skills. You want to have something that pushes them a little farther along. Do your students know why you want them to use the post-it strategy?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
And how
And
do
I
you explain
constantly
the
remind, well,
is the resistance because it's hard for them?
I do think that's it, yeah. Because the kids who actually do that a little bit more automatically don't complain as much. You know, they see the value in it, so they do it. And they do it on the Post-its, to humor me. Some of them would rather write it in notebooks, or they'd rather do it other ways. And I've actually had students approach me and say, I'd rather type this up, I'd rather do this. And I've worked that out with those students. But it's usually the pushback comes from the lower students who are struggling with it, or, I don't know, like they need more practice with it, but they don't want to practice.
They need more practice with it because it's building their capacity to really deeply engage with the text, right?
Yeah. They're the same kids who say, I read it, but I don't get it.
Could you use a VID00010 thing of pairing them up and doing think alouds as they read? So read a paragraph, think aloud about what's in the paragraph, and match them up with somebody who's just slightly ahead of the other one?
Yes.
That might be another strategy.
I would probably have to do groups of 3 with one kid who knows what's going on with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably could work that out.
And they might not struggle, might not resist as much with.
Right.
And especially if you mixed it up. Maybe it's also this hasn't worked for me, why am I doing more of it?
Okay.
Angela.
I kind of am in the middle of what they're experiencing. The VID00010 program is all based on differentiation and individualized plans, almost like students who have IEPs. Everybody kind of has their own track in which they go. And so you would think it would be very engaging for each student because they're working on their level, a lot of times with their interest of materials. But because it's the same thing every day, we do whole group for 20 minutes, and then we break up into 3 different groups and rotate for 20 minutes, and you work. It gets to the point where they're like, okay, today I don't want to do this anymore. And even though they're all doing different things, they're all on their own level, it's just the fact that every day it's still the same thing. And so I do try to change the order of the rotations, because sometimes the kids hate going to the computers first, and so they got to warm up to go there. Or they don't want to see me that day. And so if I save me for last, maybe by the time they get to me, they're a little more ready. But that's about all as far as our routine that I have control over to change. But that's the biggest resistance I get is, oh my God, do I have to get on the computer again today? Or do I have to read again today? It's a reading class, we read every day. But why am I reading again today? It's just that routine.
Are you ever allowed to read to them?
Oh, the majority of the stuff is me reading to them, but because the way it's set up is the first 20 minutes is whole group, that's me giving instruction. So, and I can kind of, that can be as flexible as I want it to be. We have a book that kind of, not a script, but gives us what we should cover and some prompts and things like that, but it's not direct instruction. It's a lot more flexible than other programs. So I can read to them, I can have them read, we can do some oral close, do a lot of different things during whole group. When they're on the computer, it's strictly what's on the computer that they have to follow. They're by themselves, individually working. When they go to independent reading, it's the same thing. They're independently reading their own book. Now, I have some kids who pair up and read some books together, but I'm not available to read to them at that time because I'm working with a group of 7 or less students in a small group environment. And sometimes I read to them, sometimes they read to me, sometimes we're working on writing. So that's another time for me to change it up. But it's not the material that they're frustrated with. It's just that constant every day going through the same.
They need more stimulation or different kinds of things.
Yeah, and even though I try to bring that in during small group and whole group, small group is 20 minutes, and if I impede on that, then I'm cutting out the other times, and some of those times get sent directly to central office where I'm monitored for fidelity. And it's based on how much time they're on the computer, not necessarily what I'm doing in the classroom sometimes. So I have to monitor that. And then, so there are other things that keep me from being able to go too far. I tend to because I don't follow rules really good, but try not to as much. But that's the only thing that's frustrating is that the kids come in and if I say, okay, let's rotate, I have to hear, oh, again, we got to get on the computer. So these 2 weeks should be fun because it's project weeks. And so we're not going to do rotations these 2 weeks. So I try to build those things in. But that's what I get. I get the more of not the materials that they're dealing with or how they have to do it, but just the set day-to-day have to go through these set.
You know, I find it odd. Oh, I'm sorry.